Hi, and welcome to this Surfray sponsored webinar using Managed Metadata and the Managed Metadata Service with Search. My name is Robert Piddocke, and I will be presenting today. I'm also author of Pro SharePoint 2010 Search, a book about SharePoint 2010 Search recently published by A-Press. Please do check it out. This webinar, as I said, was sponsored by Surfray, the leading providers in add-ons for SharePoint 2010 Search. And please visit our site at www.surfrate.com for more information about Ontolica, our search add-on for SharePoint, and also for more recorded webinars and tech articles about search. So today I'm going to talk about the Managed Metadata Service, a new service in SharePoint 2010, and how it works and what it does. We'll look at taxonomies, the Managed Metadata column, and displaying Managed Metadata in the search results. All of it is actually quite easy if you know what you're doing, but I will give you some presentation on it, give you some background, and then we'll do a live demo so I can show you exactly where to set this up. Okay, good. Let's move on. So, taxonomy. The term taxonomy is actually quite popular and we often hear it, but a lot of people, maybe those who studied biology, can understand and remember what a taxonomy is, and even maybe then there's some confusion about how that applies to information management, information workers. Well, a taxonomy, as we know from biology, is a hierarchical set or classification of different items. Very common in biology because animals and all living species are classified in this hierarchy of different things, starting with kingdom and going right down to species. As we see here, we have cat here. Now, this can also be moved over to information because, like in a library, we want to have our information organized and sorted. And most organizations now have a huge amount of information. And especially for search, for other things in SharePoint as well, the Managed Metadata Service is useful. But especially for search, it's extremely useful to be able to get this information back with metadata, that is properties, information associated with those documents that may not be necessarily on those documents, back in our search results. This does a few things for us. First of all, it allows us to have uniform terms. So we've got this service where we can say that we call it a kingdom, we don't call it a fiefdom, or we don't call it a republic, we call it a kingdom. That's the top level. And everyone is going to uniformly use that term for the top level of our taxonomy. So I'll show you in our demonstration kind of a silly little example I have, but for your organization, you'll have different levels of information, different levels of tagging that you'll want to put on the documents in order to set them into different areas. This could be projects, project names, project numbers, dates, these kinds of things. It should become quite obvious to you when you start to see the tool and think about how the processes in your organization works as to exactly what kind of terms you want to use. So the second thing that having a taxonomy does for us in SharePoint is allows us to have term compliance across farms. So before, in 2007 and previous versions of SharePoint, we could actually do a lot to help users tag. We could have lookup columns that look up a list of terms, and those terms could then be put into custom columns on our document libraries. And if we forced users to put those terms in there, then they could get those terms. But there's no central way to manage the terms before. Now we have a central place to manage terms to make sure people are spelling things correctly, they're entering them correctly, and they have some choices, so they're just not making them up blindly. For search, it also makes this metadata searchable. So we can actually have this structured metadata come back in search results and improve the quality of the search. A couple things are going to happen. One is that documents that previously didn't have the terms that we were searching for on them, if tagged and managed with the Managed Metadata Service, are going to get those results back. And also the relevancy is going to be improved for those documents because they'll have more keyword data on them in order to get back better. Finally, the last thing that I'll talk about is how the Managed Metadata will give us refiners back, and this happens automatically, and I'll show you how that works. So we can actually do a faceted drill down of the document set that we have based on the managed metadata that we've set up in the search. So you can see on the right here, there's a picture of the actual term store and a taxonomy that we have built for my specific example. A couple of things first. What are our wins with having the managed metadata service and using a managed metadata column? Is that one of the first ones is that if we use a managed metadata column in our document libraries, they are automatically indexed and mapped to a managed property. What this means, for those of you that are familiar with the search service, is that we don't have to go in and do any mappings. We'll automatically, if we have a managed metadata column, they automatically get indexed and that information will be used in search. Great. They will also automatically be surfaced in search refiners. So our refiners will come up with the metadata columns based on that term set without doing anything. That is great as well. But that's also our first gotcha. Managed metadata is automatically surfaced in refiners, and it's not trivial. It is pretty easy, but it's not trivial to turn it off. So whether we like it or not, if we make a managed metadata column, we're going to get back those as refiners. And managed metadata is stored differently in our managed properties. And if we try to use it some other way by modifying XSLT and putting it up, we'll get some different terms. However, though that managed metadata can still be mapped from a crawled property to a new managed property. So it's not that big of a deal if we know what we're doing. Okay, so let's jump over to my online demo. And first of all, we'll look at Central Admin. I'll show you how to get into the Managed Metadata Service. I think by default now, the Managed Metadata Service is a default installed service application in SharePoint 2010. If it's not, you can easily add one. You can actually add a number of them if you need to separate them at that level as well as service applications and consume them from different farms. Won't go into the architecture of that, but you can add a Managed Metadata Service. I have a couple of here. I have external metadata and the default one. So let's just open the default one and see what kind of term sets we have in there. Now, the first thing is that if you start to work with this and you open this page and you ignore the items that are on this page, as most people do, and you try to create a new group to start managing your terms, you'll notice you can't. And that's because you haven't entered any term store administrators yet. So just make yourself or your service account that you're going to use a term store administrator. And you can actually manage these term stores at the site collection level as well. So if you make a couple of librarians in your organization term store administrators, they'll be able to go in and work with the taxonomy. Of course, there are some other settings here that you can set as well. So I've got a few groups, and I've got a few terms underneath them, and I also have some subterms underneath a couple of those, and even subterms. And you can have a large number of different nodes, different levels in your taxonomy. I would suggest not to make these too deep. 3 to 5 levels is probably a maximum, because if you start to get too deep and then you get a lot of metadata and you get a very deep structure, which starts to become more obscure for end users. So try to keep it as simple and shallow as possible while also lending meaning to the different hierarchies. Some organizations are restricted by how shallow they can make it. So also some individual items will have a large number of nodes in them, a large number of term sets in them, and you should try to keep these to a manageable level as well, although that again is not always dictated by yourself. There may be already structures there that say we need to have 47 different product groups. That's okay as well. So I can add terms easily. The way to add to groups is to click on the term or the Managed Metadata Service and create a new group, which is the highest level for maybe a site or something like that. And then from there you can create a new term set, and you can have a set of different terms, and you can have some terms between below those, and then of course you can have sub-terms below those as well. You can also import term sets, so if you already have one or if you get one from a taxonomy vendor, you can import that here as well. So that's great, and we can manage this taxonomy very easily here.